So in this video, I'll be answering some community page questions I posted there like 4 or 5 days ago. We have about 6, 7, 8 questions, so thank you to those that asked me questions. I'll answer those to the best of my ability. If you missed out on it this time, then just check the community page, and maybe I'll post it on Twitter next time. My Twitter is @Mike_NYY. We have one Brooklyn Nets question, one Yankees question, and the rest are Giants-related questions. So I'll do the Giants questions first because I'm sure a majority of you are here for that. So we'll do that first, and I'll get to the other two in the end. But yeah, if you want to get on this next time, then I'll probably post this on Twitter. Check the community page, and thank you to those that asked these questions. I'm sorry the lighting in here is terrible. It is like really bright right now, but it's either this or just having me in the dark. So I'm moving soon, so hopefully in my next house the lighting will be a lot better, but for now we'll just deal with this. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and let's get into it. So here's the first question from Victor. How's the offense going to perform with a healthy Saquon, improved DJ, Daniel Jones, a new line? Also, will the fumbles decrease for Danny? So I'll just, basically hit on this for each point. So for Saquon, he went from 5 yards a carry in 2018 to 4.6 last year. He did miss 3 games, and I think he was hindered during a lot of these games due to the ankle injury. Of course, he has a better offensive line. You add Andrew Thomas, you add Nick Gates, you add possibly Shane Lemieux in starting lineup, and then Nate Solder at right tackle probably. So he should have over 1,500 rushing yards, I think. If we have a healthy Saquon Barkley, who I think will be fed the ball a lot because Jason Garrett likes to run the ball. Doesn't even matter what the score is, he wants to stick to the run, and if he has full control over the play calls, which is what I assume will happen, I do think they'll try to run the ball as much as possible. When you have a running back as talented as Saquon, you might as well do it. And Jason Garrett's had some very talented backs. I mean, DeMarco Murray and then Ezekiel Elliott, and now Saquon Barkley, who I think is the best of the bunch. So I feel like if you have a guy this good, you might as well use him, and the offensive line improvements will definitely help as well. So if it's a healthy Saquon, I expect some MVP type numbers. I don't think he'll win MVP because unfortunately the Giants probably won't have a record good enough to have an MVP on their team. But if you look at Barkley's numbers next year, they're probably going to be ridiculous, and that's pretty much what I expect. And for picking a running back that early, I really hope they use him to his max potential. That's all I want. For Daniel Jones, he should have more time to throw this year, so I think the fumbles will be decreased. Jones was sacked 38 times in 12 games last year. That's not good enough in my opinion. If you played all 16 games, then that's probably a high 40s, low 50s sack number, which is not good. Tony Romo during his career under Jason Garrett was sacked at a high of 36, and Dak Prescott was sacked 56 times in 2018, but cut that to 23 last year, so I think the 56 is more of an outlier. And Dak Prescott said about half of those sacks are on him, so it's more of a him problem than Jason Garrett's offense. So based on the history of Jason Garrett's offense, quarterbacks don't get sacked a ton. It's usually been under 40 times, which is a good number. So I do think his fumbles will decrease. Last year he had 18 fumbles. I would expect somewhere between 10 and 12. You can't really predict fumbles, obviously, but I do think that number will be cut somewhere near in half. If it's 9 fumbles, 10 fumbles, 11 fumbles, this will not be something that's completely fixed over one offseason. I don't expect it to go from 18 fumbles to 2. That seems ridiculous, but I think cutting it in half is a reasonable expectation, so I would say that for sure. But yeah, overall, I'm very optimistic about Saquon this year. Obviously, I was not a fan of the pick when it happened, but look, he's here, so I'm done complaining about it. I do think he'll have a phenomenal year as long as they use him the right way. They have the offensive line in front of him now to use him to his max potential, and a play caller that knows how to use running backs. And for Daniel Jones, he's a guy that's put on some muscle this offseason. I'm sure has worked on a lot of ball security in the offseason as well. He's doing all the right things this offseason to get better, and I do think he'll cut those fumbles in half for the 2020 season. Next question, do you see the offensive line playing at least decent this year? From Abatoba, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So in 2019, according to Football Outsiders, they were the 25th ranked offensive line, which bottom third of the league. That's not too good. It should be better based off the depth that they have at the position. This is the first time as a Giants fan that I can remember in a long time, at least a decade, where we can say that they have a good amount of offensive line depth. That has been an issue for sure the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and now we can finally say that if someone goes down, then we have a good enough offensive line depth wise to just plug and play someone in there and not really miss a beat. So you add Andrew Thomas, Shane Lemieux. I'm not sure if Lemieux's going to start. There's a chance he can play center. I don't know if it's going to happen week 1, but there's a chance, obviously. I do think that's Nick Gates' job to lose. Cam Fleming might be at right tackle, maybe Nate Solder. I think Solder's going to get the job to start the year. If he struggles, it might go on to Cam Fleming. If Fleming struggles, then it might be on to Matt Parrott. So you see what I mean here? There's a lot of depth at this position. So, no, I don't think it's like crazy to expect this offensive line to be decent. If I had to guess like where they'd be ranked next year, I would probably say somewhere between like 15 and 20 in the NFL, which is definitely good enough. And the good news now is the Giants don't have a sitting duck at quarterback, and no disrespect to Eli Manning, but that's a quarterback that needs an offensive line. Daniel Jones, as we saw, can improvise and make plays on the run and make throws on the run and even do read option stuff, which obviously you're not going to run with Eli Manning. And also there's more experience for guys like Will Hernandez in year 3 and then Nick Gates as well. So like these are guys that should get better. Kevin Zeitler, I don't have an issue with. He was fine last year as long as he doesn't, decline. He's still only 29, 30 years old. He should be fine. And then Nate Solder's the big question mark. Andrew Thomas might struggle out the gate. They face a lot of good pass rushers the first few weeks of the year, so he might struggle in the beginning, but I do think he'll be fine ultimately. And then Nate Solder, I don't know what they're going to get from him. So I do think by the end of the year, it will be much better. The offensive line might have their struggles the first month of the season, but it will be a unit that gets better as the season goes on because it's a lot of young players. And then you have a guy like Nate Solder going from the left side to the right side probably. And you still have Will Hernandez, who's young, and Nick Gates, who's going to play center in the NFL for the first time probably. So it's not going to be smooth out of the gates, in my opinion. No pun intended with the gates, but I think by the end of the year, it'll be a pretty good unit. And as I said, I think it could be a unit ranked between 15 and 20 in regards to the entire NFL. Next question from Brad Smith. Why should we be excited about the return of Ryan Connolly? So Ryan Connolly, the second-year linebacker out of Wisconsin. He was a 4th or 5th round pick last year. I forget what it was. Only played 4.5 games last year. Obviously, tore his ACL in week 4 against the Redskins, so that was pretty devastating for a team that definitely needed linebacker help. And later in the year, they signed Deion Buchanan, who is a shell of his former self, and then David Mayo played a lot of meaningful snaps, and then Alec Ogletree was a disaster. So the Giants definitely needed Ryan Connolly last year. It was very unfortunate that he went down. So yeah, he's a guy that I think is a really good linebacker number 2. I'm not sold on him being like a number 1 Mike linebacker yet at this point in his career, but I think as Giant fans and even NFL fans in general, we tend to overrate our own players. I've personally not seen enough from Ryan Connolly for me to believe this guy's a future star and a decade-long starter for this team. I think at the very least he's a really good linebacker number 2 and possibly a really good depth piece. So there's a lot of things on tape to like about Ryan Connolly, though, but you cannot predict how guys are going to come back from injuries. I mean, ACL injuries are pretty routine nowadays as compared to 30, 40 years ago, but at the same time, he still has to come back, and we have to hope he's the same guy, and if not better. So sometimes it could take a year to return to full form. Conley's a guy who I think has tremendous instincts. That's the first thing that stood out to me when I watched him after the Giants drafted him. He didn't miss any tackles last year, according to Pro Football Reference, and that was on 20 combined tackle attempts. So that's pretty awesome in my opinion. So to have those numbers and the instincts, and people kind of overrate him in coverage, and you want to point to the 2 interceptions, and a lot of people fell into that trap with Alec Ogletree in 2018 when he had 5 interceptions, which I feel like it's kind of an outlier. Like, he's not going to do that every year, obviously, but Ryan Connolly had 2 interceptions. The one against the Redskins was a tip ball, and the other one against the Buccaneers was just a terrible throw by Jameis Winston behind Mike Evans and right to Connolly. So, I can't say that Ryan Connolly is this tremendous coverage linebacker, but he's very fluid in coverage. I think he'll be fine. I just don't think he'll be elite at it, but he seems fine to me. I don't expect him to, cover the top tier tight ends in man coverage and be really good at it, but in terms of just being average at it, I think he can do that for sure. So based on his instincts and his tackling ability, I think he has a very good chance to be the starting linebacker next to Blake Martinez. And I know this is a defense that's going to have a lot of different looks. If you watch my Patrick Graham film review, there was a lot of instances where the linebackers were at the line of scrimmage, and maybe Ryan Connolly gets a good amount of sacks next year, which we might not expect or something like that. But it really comes down to his health. I think if he's 100%, then he'll be fine. I don't expect him to be a star, as I said, but in terms of being a depth piece and a number 2 linebacker, he's a fantastic player to have. And for where they got him in the draft, whether it was the 4th or 5th round, now I can't remember, but whatever it was, it's a tremendous value. It really depends if he comes back healthy. I hope he does, because he could be a special player and a starter for a long time. I'm not 100% guaranteed. It's not 100% guaranteed it's gonna happen, but I do think the chances of that happening are pretty high, because based on his instincts, a player like that can last in the NFL for a long time. So I like his chances. Next question from Board and Arrow. What is the leadership dynamic going to be in 2020? OBJ failed to become a leader when he was there. Will it be DJ, Saquon, and Baker? I don't know if I'm thinking of the right Baker, but if it's DeAndre Baker, I personally don't see that happening. So for this team, I mean, Eli Manning's gone, Zach DeOsse's gone, the longest tenured Giants are gone, so there will be a time where new leaders need to step up, and I think this is the year it needs to happen. So this is a good question. I think Daniel Jones, as we saw from last year, is a guy that will lead by example. He will do the same thing Eli Manning did. I don't think he'll be too outspoken, but we can tell he's a guy who will lead by example based on his work ethic and the way he practices and stuff like that. Daniel Jones will lead by example for sure, but I don't think he'll be outspoken. There are going to be verbal leaders on this team. I think you look at guys like Saquon Barkley, Sterling Shepard, Jabril Peppers on the defensive end, Blake Martinez, and James Bradbury, some good veterans there. So I do think those guys will be the leaders on this team. I'm trying to think who else can step up. I know Michael Thomas is off the team now. He was a good leader, especially for the special teams. But I think Will Hernandez maybe has some potential. He has some meanness in him, and he's kind of outspoken for an offensive lineman as compared to most of them. I think most offensive linemen kind of keep to themselves, but Andrew Thomas doesn't seem to speak out too much. I mean, maybe Golden Tate, but I don't think throughout his career he's been known as a leader. He's more of a lead by example type guy. So I do think in terms of being vocal leaders, I do think it's more of the Sterling Shepard and Saquon Barkley types on the offensive end. Then you have some of the big free agent signings in Blake Martinez, James Bradbury, and then maybe Jabril Peppers as well. And I'm not sure why people still hate on Odell Beckham. I know some people will never like the guy, but honestly, the locker room was not against Odell. I feel like a lot of people liked him. I remember back to that video when Odell got his contract. It seemed like a lot of people in the locker room were happy for him. And, he was a guy that just wanted to win. I know a lot of people will have this bad perception of Odell, but, at the end of the day, I think the guy just wanted to win really badly. Maybe it was more of like a me type of thing in other people's eyes, but for me, he just seemed like a guy that really wanted to win and was tired of being on bad teams. So, I could be wrong, but for me, I just don't think Odell was that bad of a dude. So it's kind of a shame that people look at him like that, but that is your opinion. So I don't really have any factual evidence to tell you that he's a good teammate, because, of course, it's 52 other guys in the locker room that might tell you different answers. But I do feel that, for the most part, I haven't heard anything bad about Odell Beckham as a teammate. Of course, that interview with Lil Wayne did not help for sure, saying he'd rather play in Los Angeles or whatever he said, but, I think in just terms of being a good teammate, I really don't think he was that bad. So that is your opinion, though, so I'm not going to hate on you for that. But I do think Daniel Jones will lead by example, and the other guys, as I said before, will probably be the verbal leaders of this team for 2020. So now on to non-Giants questions. So the first one is, will KD and Kyrie combo work? This is, of course, for the Brooklyn Nets. They are known for big locker room issues, from Andrew. So, for these two, it really depends 100% on their health. I think if Kyrie and KD are going to play, majority of their games and stay healthy, then I do think this will be fine. But, of course, if they continue to be hurt, then it might be an issue. Kyrie has shown over the years he is definitely not a durable guy, unfortunately. Kevin Durant, I know, had 1 year where he missed half the season. I forget what the injury was, but he missed half a year in 2012, 2013. It was a while ago, but the Thunder got the 8th seed that year, and he came back for the playoffs, I believe. And then, of course, he tore his Achilles. So, that's the big injury, obviously, and he's not going to come back for this COVID championship series, whatever you want to call it, for the NBA on July 31st, and neither is Kyrie, unfortunately. But for the Nets, it really depends who that third star is. I just think it could be Bradley Beal. That's the main rumor right now, but it could be anybody. There's obviously some under-the-radar names that could be thrown out there. The Nets definitely could use a stretch four. I would not trade for Kevin Love or Blake Griffin because his contract's ridiculous, and same with Kevin Love. But, the Nets could really use a guy like that. Maybe Serge Ibaka comes over here. I know his contract's up. I don't know if it's this year or next year. I think it might be this year. So Ibaka is definitely an answer, but there's a lot of ways the Nets can go about this. But I would be very surprised if we went through this entire offseason after this summer of, not hearing the Nets in any big trade rumors, because I just find it hard to believe that they want to stick with Dinwiddie, LeVert, and Jared Allen and all those guys. Even Joe Harris, his contract's up. All those guys are going to be back next year. I would find that hard to believe. I'm thinking Taurean Prince is probably a name that's going to be in trade rumors as well. So I don't have concerns about them in the locker room. I know that's like the main question here, because at the end of the day, Kyrie and KD have been friends for a long time, and this was a decision that they both made as free agents. Like, they wanted to play with each other, and then, they brought in DeAndre Jordan, another friend of theirs. So these are friends playing together, and like, there might be some moments where there's disagreements, or like something big happens in a future playoff game and like someone gets mad, but like, that's just professional sports. Like, disagreements happen and some arguments happen, but I don't think it'll be a disaster. I don't think the entire experiment of Kyrie and KD will be negative if they're healthy. If they end up getting hurt all the time, which is definitely possible, then this will obviously be a big miss. But as a Nets fan, I can't say I'd be disappointed about that. I think at the end of the day, I was happy about this. Some people moving on from D'Angelo Russell was not the right move. For me, I was fine with it, because if you kept D'Angelo Russell in this young core, you're basically playing for the 6 or 7 or 8 seed every year. That's not a championship team. I don't think D'Angelo Russell will ever be a championship type point guard. If you put the right team around him, maybe, but he's not going to win anything in Minnesota probably. But you think about, can a team with Karis LeVert and D'Angelo Russell win a championship as the main players? Probably not, but it's a fun team. It's a fun and a young team, but that's not a championship team. So I don't blame the Nets for going out and getting Kyrie and KD. I would have done it, over again if I knew it was going to happen like this. Obviously, Kyrie only playing like 20 games this year. It was not ideal, but it is what it is. So I do think they'll be fine. It just depends on the health, and, we'll see who the next head coach is. I do think Kyrie and KD will have a lot of say in that, but we'll see what happens. Maybe Jacque Vaughn stays around. I'm not exactly sure, but I do think those two guys will have a big say in who the next head coach is. But overall, as a Nets fan, I am excited. It's going to be a fun offseason. There's probably going to be a lot of trade rumors. The Nets have a lot of young players, pretty good contracts like LeVert and Dinwiddie, even Jared Allen on a rookie contract, who they could move for some bigger stars, and they might have the cap space. They might have to move a Taurean Prince type guy to free up some cap space, maybe DeAndre Jordan as well. We'll see what it comes to, but, I'm pretty excited about it. I think the future's pretty bright. It just depends on the health of Kyrie and KD, obviously. And last question, Yankees season prediction, question mark, from a name I'm not going to pronounce, I'm sorry. So yeah, I don't know how many games are going to be played in the MLB this year. We hear different numbers every day. I feel like I heard like 89, I heard 74 games. The players want more games, and the owner's not giving them enough money and stuff like that. And some people are mad about it, saying, hey, you're still getting paid millions of dollars, just go ahead and play. But I see where the players are coming from. Like, if you're supposed to make like $30 million, you might only end up making like $5 million, which is kind of ridiculous. And I see it from the players' perspective, but I also feel like I just want to see baseball. So like, I just want them to figure it out. And Rob Manfred said, I think today or yesterday, that he's like 100% confident there's going to be games played this year. We'll wait and see on that one. But in terms of the Yankees, Aaron Judge was supposed to miss the start of the year, but of course things got pushed back, so that's definitely good for him. Giancarlo Stanton might have missed the beginning of the year, but now things are pushed back. So if they have Judge and Stanton and Sanchez and they're all healthy, I do think this is the best roster in the AL. I would not say the MLB, because the Dodgers are ridiculously stacked over there. But, there's teams in the AL that still scare me. I think the Minnesota Twins have a deadly lineup, and if they played games at Target Field this year, they might have broken some kind of home run record. I think they had some type of home run record last year, actually, but they were ridiculous with hitting home runs. And then the Astros as well. You can't forget about them. I think the A's have a really good young rotation. Same with the Rays. So those are two teams I could see being like wild card teams that might make some noise as well. So it's not going to be easy for the Yankees for sure. But, I did have my World Series prediction. If you watched my like 2020 MLB prediction video, which I posted like 2 weeks before sports stopped. So like, that was kind of unfortunate timing, but I did have the Yankees and the Dodgers playing against each other, which I know is kind of boring, because that's like, basically everyone's answer for who you think is going to be in the World Series. They do have the best rosters, but for the Yankees, there are some interesting questions. I know that Herman is going to, come back from suspension at some point, and then you have Luis Severino's out for the year. Can Jordan Montgomery or Jay Happ step up? I know Tanaka and Cole should be fine. James Paxton's going to come back from injury at some point. I don't know if he's healthy right now, but he was supposed to miss the beginning of the year. They still have a tremendous bullpen, obviously. Gary Sanchez needs to stay healthy. What do you get out of Luke Voigt or Mike Ford? Does Miguel Andujar move to first base? I'd be fine with that, honestly. I'm I'm not really a fan of him at third base. He has a weird throwing motion. It always scares me, honestly. It's kind of like how, if you're a baseball fan, Ryan Zimmerman used to throw for the Nationals at third base before they moved him to first base. It was ugly watching him throw. So if you know Ryan Zimmerman, you know what I'm talking about. But they still have LeMahieu, obviously. Unfortunately, Didi Gregorius is gone, but Gleyber Torres should be there. And Gio Urshela, can he repeat what he did last year? He was a guy that came out of nowhere and just started hitting like 300 and played some really good defense. I'm sold that he's a good defender. I don't know if he can hit 300 again, but that'd be awesome, obviously. And then you have, some good utility players as well. I know Tyler Wade is hit or miss, but still, he could be all right. Mike Ford, as I said, is a pretty good left-handed hitter, so they have that going for them. I think Aaron Hicks is basically out for the year. He had Tommy John. They brought Brett Gardner back. Mike Tauchman, can he repeat what he did last year? Can Clint Frazier finally step up? We'll have to see about that one. So it's an exciting team for sure. But right now I'm looking at the Dodgers depth chart, and they are just absolutely stacked. Their rotation is Kershaw, Walker Buehler, David Price, Julio Urias, and Alex Wood, who never stays healthy. But still, their bullpen's ridiculous. They added Blake Trinan, who was like unhittable a couple years ago. So yeah, this team is absolutely stacked. Will Smith was a good catcher. Max Muncy, Bellinger, Gavin Lux is a great prospect. This team, Justin Turner, they're just completely stacked. Corey Seager, who's been kind of underwhelming the last couple of years. AJ Pollock, if he can stay healthy. Jock Peterson, Chris Taylor can be a good player as well. So yeah, this is a very scary team, and I forgot about Mookie Betts. That's another one right there. Mookie Betts for the Dodgers. So the Dodgers, I feel like, are the better team. And I did have them winning the World Series in my 2020 prediction video, which I made right before sports stopped, unfortunately, so that was pretty bad timing. But I do think the Dodgers are a bit better right now, but I would not count the Yankees out. I do think, looking at the rosters, of course you can't predict baseball, nobody can, but I think looking at the rosters, the Yankees should make the World Series, but the circumstances are so weird this year. They might not play games in their home stadium, so it's kind of weird. I don't know how it's going to work out, but at the end of the day, I'm going to watch. I miss baseball for sure, so I'm just excited if there's actually a season, but I do think if things play off base how the rosters look and guys stay relatively healthy, I do think Yankees-Dodgers is the most likely, but as I said before, I could see a surprise team like the Twins or the A's or the Rays maybe making some type of title run, so we'll have to see. But for the NL, I think the Dodgers are in a pretty good position right now based off this roster. They're pretty ridiculous. So with that being said, that'll do it for this video. Once again, thank you guys who, those of you who ask questions, I appreciate that. Hopefully we'll do this again soon, maybe like a once a month type thing, and we'll try to find some stuff to talk about. Hopefully you found this video entertaining. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe, all that stuff, and let me know if you enjoyed my last couple of Giants videos. I'm hoping to regain the audience here that we once had, obviously, so hopefully you guys enjoyed those videos, and I will talk to you next time.